I, Pate, have mastered a whale, and now I have an important decision to make. Should I go to war with Chad Summerchild, or should I bend the knee to him? I have quite a bit of soul searching to do. Oh wait, whale dream! Arnold, I'm so happy we're going into business. We're going to make the best toilets in the world. Of course, the best toilets available. Ones that can taste. Wait, was that Westworld Watch Season 2? Not exactly the most popular series. Hard to believe that that was the center of my incredibly important prophetic vision. You're part of a story. One that involves tasting toilets. And our episode begins with Tyland Lannister's wacky adventures in Essos. Wacky adventures in the season finale? Alright. How did Tyland make it to Essos already? I mean, because of the blockade, he would have had to go all the way down to Storm's End before catching a ship, and he left when Criston Cole left, and Criston is still marching to Harrenhal. Whoa. Criston Cole does what Criston Cole does, okay? He marches in circles, he feigns one way for no reason, he beheads random lords, he teleports, he wastes time sniffing handkerchiefs. You can't compare anything to Criston Cole. It's perfectly reasonable that Tyland would be down in lice 2 episodes later. And so here we find that the Triarchy is willing to help the Greens, but Daario Naharis' great-grandfather wants the Stepstones in return so they can place a tax on goods that pass through them. And Tyland worries about the increase in costs on basic goods. Basic goods, eh? Look, I understand this is mostly a George thing, but the importance of sea trading routes in Westeros doesn't really make very much sense. First of all, generally during the Middle Ages, agricultural technology advanced so much that people were able to grow things locally in fair abundance. This was notably in contrast to the classical period, and believe it or not, during the Middle Ages, famines were relatively rare. Sea trade from far away did happen, but it was for goods like wool, timber, and wine. But ignoring all of that, the thing about Westeros is that it's fairly blessed in that it's long, and each side of the continent links to different temperate zones. This means that if you're looking for, say, northern skins or lumber, or tropical produce, that's going to exist on both sides of Westeros. And the continent is blessed with an incredible network of rivers that cross the mainland anyway. The need for trading ships to make this crappy trip around Dorne, which famously doesn't have any good ports and is filled with pirates, is actually pretty low except for luxury goods like spices. So adding a tax at the Stepstones, well, it doesn't really change all that much.
Oh my god, you are so boring. Shut the fuck up.
Anyway, on top of asking for the Stepstones, the Triarchy also says that Tyland has to impress the Admiral of the fleet, Lohar, who is apparently the sibling of that Bracken from episode 2. And then we get to Aemond, who is burning cities for shits and giggles. Man, just in episode 2, he was talking about his deep regret for accidentally killing Luke. Now he's all genocide and war crimes. How fast does a man go off the deep end?
These are Targaryens, man. They're all cray-cray. Daenerys lost it even faster.
Anyway, next Larry Strong shows up and tells Aegon that they must escape the city for Braavos now that Rhaenyra has found 3 new Dragonriders and Aemond has gone insane. Aegon wants to arrest Aemond instead, but Larys points out that Vhagar is the only defense against Rhaenyra's dragons. The scene is actually remarkably logical, emotional, intense, and then we hear about Aegon's exploding dick. And meanwhile in the Vale, no one is looking for the king consort's daughter as she wanders aimlessly.
Aren't there dangerous mountain clans out there? Ones who famously kidnap and rape women?
Yeah, presumably. Everybody just really hates Rhaena. Even the mountain clans. Anyway, next we find Ulf the White acting like a fearless ass, despite the fact that he watched his host let 100 people burn to death last episode. Jace screams at Ulf about how Aemond just burned Sharp Point, and wonders if Ulf is prepared to face his enemy.
Didn't they try to face Aemond last episode? That was the whole lure plan, right? Were they not prepared then? I actually have no clue how easy or difficult it is to ride a dragon.
I think it's super easy. Remember, Jon Snow mastered one in 20 minutes.
Yeah, but he also mastered oral sex without any practice either.
Well, in our next scene, Corlys then schools Rhaenyra on how many dragons the Greens have. It's 3. The Greens have 3 dragons. It's not that hard to keep count. But Rhaenyra brain farts and completely forgets about Tessarion and Dreamfire.
Yeah, this is really weird. If riding a dragon is super simple, why would anyone dismiss Dreamfire?
Well, Rhaenyra says it's because Helena doesn't ride, even though we saw her ride in Season 1, Episode 7, and because she's not a warrior, supposedly.
Helena sits around mumbling to herself while smashing spiders, and she thinks the Blacks murdered her son. Why would anyone feel safe with her holding the world's second biggest nuclear bomb?
Well, I guess this is why Corlys's hand, to deal with Rhaenyra's idiocy.
And then we get this baffling scene with Damon. After being specifically told last episode that the Riverlords hate Damon and support Rhaenyra, Damon now speaks of the Rivermen as if they're his, and Alfred Broom urges Damon to declare himself king, saying the Riverlords will follow. And this isn't just their opinion. Later in the episode when Rhaenyra arrives, the Rivermen do not kneel to Rhaenyra. They wait for Damon, and then kneel with him. They were in fact following him. And this is just simply fucking madness. We must somehow forget that Damon couldn't get any Rivermen to support him because they were loyal to the Tullys, except for the Blackwoods. And then we have to forget that the Blackwoods abused the Brackens, causing the Riverlands to condemn Damon in the middle of the night and telling him that he sucked. And then we're supposed to forget that Damon was completely lost without support, and so Alice Rivers had to murder a dude to put Oscar Tully in power. And then we have to forget that Oscar Tully was very explicit in a speech that his oath was to Rhaenyra and not Damon. And then Tully forces Damon to execute the one lord who is loyal to him. In this episode, we are asked to forget the plot of the entire season for Damon. In fact, I'm having a really tough time coming up with a clumsier plot line in all of Game of Thrones. One where all of the characters shift after a season of behaving one way to precisely the opposite position without any explanation. I mean, I suppose the Faceless Men suddenly being out in the open clumsy killers comes to mind. I mean, this is on this level. The Rivermen go from hating Damon and supporting Rhaenyra to suddenly being Damon's men. And somehow, this isn't even the worst part of this episode.
Yeah, we then get to Alicent and Helena, and Alicent, well, she suddenly wants to run off with Helena.
Wow. Alicent, of all people, wants to run off. This is a woman who instilled in her sons the notion that Rhaenyra's reign was illegitimate. Then she forced her son to marry his sister incestuously against his wishes. Then she conspired to expose Rhaenyra publicly for adultery. Then conspired to usurp Rhaenyra's throne. Then forced her son to go along with this against his wishes. Then occupied the Kingsguard when he was supposed to be protecting Helena's child. Then emotionally abused her son, making him recklessly go off into war and become a cripple. And now she just wants to run off with Helena, who rides the second biggest dragon in the world, leaving behind her other 3 sons to presumably die. I mean, I just don't get what the writers are doing here with Alicent. I feel like they're trying to make her sympathetic by giving her all this screen time, but then they fail over and over and over again. She is far more reckless and evil and uncaring about her children than her book counterpart. And her book counterpart is pretty one-dimensionally evil. I find myself weirdly siding with Aemond in this scene when he wants Helena to fight. The Greens are clearly outgunned, and they are in a situation of Alicent's making. Their entire family will be destroyed and die unless Dreamfire joins the fight.
Moving on, we then get to Gawain's super sleuth, who sees Kristen sniffing a handkerchief and figures out that he's fucking his sister. Gawain is at first upset, and then Kristen Cole tells him that, we're all gonna die, and eventually all the people that remember us are gonna die, and then the sun is eventually going to supernova, and then the Andromeda Galaxy will collide with the Milky Way, and then there will be a heat death to the universe, so all of this is pointless. And so Gawain ends up too depressed to kill Kristen. And then we are back for the wacky adventures of Tyland Lannister, where he's busy mud wrestling with our gender-ambiguous Lohar. There's punches, there's blood, there's offers to participate in cannibalism. We're not sure if this is fighting or flirting, but it sure is a barrel of laughs. And then we have Jace pouting and Rhaena shivering. And then we're back for more wacky adventures of Tyland Lannister. Is that Tyland singing? That sure is wacky. Lohor agrees to sail with Tyland and then offers some polyamorous sex with his or her or their wives. We sure don't know where everything is heading in this strange foreign land, but fun will be had for the whole family. Anyway, again we get another scene showing us that Ulf is an asshole, and then we get the worst possible scene that could have been put in not just this episode,
but the whole series. Yes, they throw us some lore porn with a green man clomping around for some unexplained reason. I guess they aren't going with humans with weirwood branches stuck on their foreheads. But then, well, after having an entire season be about Damon's decision on whether he will submit to Rhaenyra or seek a kingship for himself and an exploration of his psyche, the writers just said fuck it. Damon is straight up told that the world will end unless Rhaenyra sits the throne. The big decision that he needs to make is taken away from him, and he's told that he has no free will. And he's told this not just by Alice Rivers, but by Helena as well, who for some reason has stayed up and is projecting herself at this very same moment. And who for some reason doesn't hate Damon for killing her son.
And who for some reason has uncray-crayed. She inverse Targaryened.
The human heart in conflict with itself discovers there's no human heart. There's no choice. There's no free will. There's no conflict. The rogue prince has become an automaton. Because it's all a story. Everyone's favorite part of the Game of Thrones finale.
There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. And who has a better story than Bran the Broken?
Now, in case you have a short memory, people hated the end of Game of Thrones. It was a common punchline that it was horrible. And unless you're 9 years old, you should remember this.
I want to start by saying I know we're following the Game of Thrones panel, which is a fucking nightmare, just objectively. I also know that their showrunners didn't show up because they didn't want to answer questions about the show. So.
And yes, there were many things wrong with the end of Game of Thrones, but specifically, people took shots at the story thing.
And what I would also like to say is I would imagine those guys regret making Bran the king. Because ultimately, he doesn't have the best story. And that's...
I believe I said something very similar 5 years ago. Does the Bran 9000 really have the best story? Better than, say, Sam, who joined the Night's Watch and traveled north of the Wall and killed a White Walker and kidnapped an incest baby and helped elect a Lord Commander and discovered where Dragonglass was and cured a sufferer of grayscale and fought an army of the dead? But my criticism went a bit further. It wasn't just that Bran didn't have the best story. His story was in no way a socially uniting tale. Let's assume that indeed stories unite us. Sociology of culture, Emil Durkheim, all of that, fine. How does this relate to the Bran 9000? His story is his story. Besides Mira, it doesn't affect anyone else. His story doesn't make a Dornishman suddenly get along with a Valeman. What's so aggravating about this is that the actual Middle Ages were filled with war despite common stories. I'm going to go a little obscure here, but there was this little story that nearly every European believed. It was called the Bible, and it did jack all in preventing war and unifying people. And I still stand by these criticisms, but back then I didn't bring up one particularly important aspect of the story idea. One that fails pretty hard. You see, there's also a meta-narrative aspect to the story idea. The story isn't just about Bran's story or the story that unites Westeros. It's the story of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire themselves. Someone, whether it be D&D or George R. R. Martin, is trying to say that stories are a fight against death. We die, but our stories live on and on.
That's what death is, isn't it? Forgetting. Being forgotten.
There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it. No enemy can defeat it.
So great. Homer is immortal because the Iliad is a great story and lives on. But here's the thing. Tyrion said the story has to be good.
There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story.
The writers here were actually arrogantly calling Game of Thrones a good, powerful story. Something that in and of itself fights death. But it wasn't a good story. Yes, we're all talking about it, but will people be talking about it in 100 years? And so when Helena mentions that Damon is part of a story that will fight death, is that really accurate? Is this really a great and powerful story? I mean, maybe you like the show, maybe you like Fire and Blood, but come on. Is this a story no one can stop? Is this a story no enemy can defeat? This story. Sweet Robin, you could have just said, don't latch your wagon to season 8.
So anyway, we find out that Helena is up for some reason, and so is Aemond, despite the fact that we established that it was the middle of the night with Damon where he criticizes Alice for not being in bed. And we find out that Helena has no quirks or misunderstandings about her visions now. She understands them clearly and completely. The season started with her fearing rats, which was a jumbled, abstract fear of rat catchers killing her child, but now she knows the future quite well and can communicate it quite well and believes that the future is unchangeable for some reason. She has gone from patch-face to wizened seer, off-screen with no explanation.
Like I said, man, she uncray-crayed. She inverse Targaryened. She nay regretted.
Yeah, so how do these visions all work? Why is Helena projecting herself at the same time that Alice is connecting Damon to the werewood? Did Alice and Helena team up? Did Alice call Helena up and say, hey, this green man and I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation for Damon. You want to be part of the last slide? And why would she be part of it? Shouldn't she hate Damon?
Oh, I have a theory. Helena does hate Damon for killing her son, and does hate Aemond for maiming Aegon. She's sending visions to try to get them to kill each other at the God's Eye.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. The visions we see are real. They will happen. Bloodraven will be born, and will be the Three-Eyed Crow. The White Walkers will come, Dany will birth dragons, Rhaenyra will sit the throne. The future is in fact set in this story. Her scheming is completely irrelevant. In fact, this gets to the basic problem of prophecy being true in any story. Every action becomes pointless, and no one should care. If the future is set and unchangeable, as Helena tells Aemond, why would she tell Damon he must play his part? Why tell Aemond he's going to die? Why be angry at Aemond for maiming Aegon when he had no choice in the matter? Why do anything? It all makes no difference. Everything is just going to happen anyway because it's unchangeable. At the end of the day, true unchangeable prophecy is a dumb plot device. It makes characters' choice irrelevant. Why should we care about any characters and the choices they make? It doesn't make a difference. Also, people get on us for talking about spoilers, but Helena just spoiled half the series for everyone. She tells us that Aemond will die at the God's Eye, Rhaenyra will sit the throne, and Aegon will be king again. Great. And nothing anyone does will change that.
Man, now I know how Gawain's super sleuth feels.
Anyway, Rhaenyra then arrives at Harrenhal, where Damon and his rivermen kneel for her. It's a beautiful scene that makes no sense, as the rivermen were already loyal to Rhaenyra. And it's an atrocious one thematically, as Damon has no real agency in his decision.
Also, the scene kind of sucks because Damon says he will follow Rhaenyra until the end of their story. They're still latching this train to season 8. Gods know why.
Anyway, next we get the culmination of the High Allen story, which is essentially, fuck you, Dad. It's actually pretty well done, though it could have happened episodes ago. And meanwhile in the Vale, still no one gives a shit about Rhaena.
Which brings us to the grand pile of crap climax of the episode. Rhaenyra and Alicent meet again. Needless to say, I hate this scene. I hate it on so many levels. So, essentially in this scene, we find out that Alicent now wants to run off with Helena and Jaehaera. And like the audience, Rhaenyra thinks this is pretty rich, as Alicent essentially caused the war. To which Alicent responds in a weird self-whitewashing that Rhaenyra would have been challenged anyway. Except, no, that wouldn't have happened at all. Yes, in Season 1, Episode 9, we find out that Otto and the Small Council were scheming to question Rhaenyra's claim without Alicent. However, Alicent is weirdly forgetting that she asked Larys Strong to bring her father back his hand. Larys murders his father to bring back Otto for Alicent. Needless to say, with Lionel's hand instead of Otto, no, there would be no questioning of Rhaenyra's claim. Not to mention the fact that it was Alicent that refused the Jace-Helena marriage idea. That would have stopped the war as well.
Well, the show does love to try to repair the reputation of characters who are already established as evil. I mean, leading into this scene, Rhaenyra laments the death of common people, despite having 100 or so burned alive in the last episode. Alicent is the type of person who wants children's eyes cut out and hangs out with people who murdered their dad and brother. And yet somehow, she's also a good person?
Well, this is where this scene gets weird. Rhaenyra asks Alicent why she's here. In fact, she asks the question repeatedly, and we never get a good response. Alicent wants to run off, and that has nothing to do with Rhaenyra. She can just go. She can obviously hop on a ship at Storm's End, or she and Helena can just hop on the back of Dreamfire. Rhaenyra even says as much. So what the hell is Alicent doing? What is Rhaenyra providing her? And the answer seems to be nothing. Absolutely nothing. I have watched this mind-numbingly gibberish scene 5 times, and the best answer I can come up with on what Alicent is receiving here is that she thinks that if she surrenders King's Landing, the war will end faster and she'll save some small folk lives. I cannot for the life of me understand why the war would end faster, but it's good for Rhaenyra. And then Rhaenyra viciously demands that Alicent give up her son Aegon for public execution. It's as if there's some sort of bargaining going on, except Rhaenyra isn't giving anything to Alicent. This scene is literally Alicent wanting to surrender King's Landing to Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra saying, "Great, I will let you surrender a city to me if I can kill your son." And then Alicent fucking accepts it. She doesn't ask for a single thing in return. She doesn't try to bargain for Aegon to be a ward or sent to the wall. She doesn't even mention Aemond or Daeron or Gawain Super Sleuth or Otto. Presumably, they're all gonna die too. I certainly don't see Aemond surrendering, and Gawain is on his way to battle as these two women speak. It's just a dumb scene. If Alicent wanted to surrender the city, she could have just sent a bunch of ravens declaring that King's Landing had knelt to Rhaenyra. She certainly didn't need to head to Dragonstone and agree to have her son executed for nothing in return. The scene is not only idiotic, but it makes me hate both Rhaenyra and Alicent viciously. Like, I really hate them. I cannot understand how Alicent would just give up her child for execution with no effort to save her son, and she just forgets about her other children. And I cannot understand why Rhaenyra would be so utterly cruel to Alicent. Both of these characters just suck, and I hate them both. They make Damon look like the best one of the lot, and they make Cersei seem like a good mother by comparison.
Well, Brendan, at least in the end, we get a nice montage.
Yeah, $5 says that these military movements don't make any sense in Season 3.
Happy birthday, Chad!
Thank you, everyone. This was really thoughtful.
Here you go, Chad. I got you a gift certificate for a day spa.
Oh, why thank you, Pate. And in return, I will execute your children. Does anyone else have any gifts? Anyone? Anyone?